Welcome everybody to the Valley. Today's race is a Cliffcoin Race. Random drivers are selected from a sign-up waiver over at the Cliff International Raceway on Facebook. Winning driver gets Cliff coins, which can be used and redeemed at the Cliff merch store. Moving on to our drivers. These are the 8 drivers. And introducing Group 1, we have the Lamborghini Veneno driven by Charles Kester Jr., 69 Camaro driven by the Sasquatch, the Cadillac ATS VR driven by Racing Rick Barry, and last but not least, the 61 Impala driven by High Octane. Moving on to race 1. As we can see here on the replay, this was a pretty clean race from start to finish. Sasquatch taking an early lead, followed by Charles Jr., Racing Rick and High Octane tailing in the back. Everyone keeping their starting positions down to the finish line. Easy win for Sasquatch, 5 points. Charles with 3 points, Racing Rick with 2, and Octane in the back with 1. On to race number 2. This was a much tighter race up front, with Sasquatch trying to pass Racing Rick multiple times, but not really getting the chance, with Racing Rick putting blocks in every corner. High Octane being close behind. Another clean race start to finish. Charles Jr. coming down, last place in this race. All drivers kept their starting positions. These guys are pretty clean racers. Moving on to race 3. The last race I said these guys were pretty clean, and I think this time they were determined to show me that they weren't. After having an accident the first race, we had a restart. Second race, everything looks good coming down to the finish line, but then High Octane bangs right in the intersection, losing all momentum. Charles Jr. coming in hot and T-bones Racing Rick. Sasquatch being the only driver to not finish this race. Still in a good place for points. Race 4. Charles Kester Jr. getting the much needed win after a massive pileup. As we can see here, we see High Octane right on his tail. I think he must have brake checked him right after the cave because it caused High Octane to flip over, causing a massive pileup. Kester being the only person to finish this race, much needed points, 11. He moves on, and so does Racing Rick Barry with 10 points. Both these drivers fought very hard to make it to the finals. As you can see, waiting for the next opponents, we're going to introduce Group 2. First being the Lamborghini Gallardo driven by Willie Makeit. The Toyota AE86 Torino driven by Bolo Brown. The Porsche 934 Turbo driven by Scoop. And lastly, we got the 17 Camaro ZL1 driven by Tobias Johnson. Moving on to race 1. We see Group 2 starting with a lot of action, with Scoop taking a very commanding lead. Brown flips his car on the second exit going down to the waterfall. As we get out of the cave, we can see that Scoop has a very good lead, but Tobias Johnson wrecks his car right in the intersection, leaving only the finishing for Scoop and Willie Makeit, 5 and 3. On to race 2. This time more racing action, but the complete opposite of what happened in race 1. As we can see, Tobias Harris and Bolo Brown taking a good lead. Coming out the cave on the final stretch, Tobias Harris hits the intersection but still makes it across the line. Bolo Brown T-bones him. Scoop's trying to come in, but not enough momentum. Will he make it? Nowhere close. Complete opposite of last round. 2 DNFs. Race 3. Not as much action as last race. Everybody finishes. Bolo Brown takes a good lead, followed closely by Tobias Johnson and Willie Make It. Everybody coming real close to each other, and as you can see, coming to the finish line, Tobias Johnson tries to overtake Bolo Brown right at the end, but it was too little too late. He's going to have to settle for second place. On to race number 4. Will he make it? This wasn't his race, man. Coming out of the second corner, he grinds the edge of the track. Bolo Brown and Scoop passes by him, leading him down to third. Bolo Brown takes the win. Will he make it in third place? He really needed those points to move on. Bolo Brown with back-to-back wins sets him up for the finals. Scoop and Tobias Johnson going head-to-head for the final position. Best out of 3. Fastest time on the inside lane gets you the inside lane if there's a tie at the end of race 2. Tobias Johnson takes race 1, 6.673. Scoop takes race 2 with a time of 6.72, which puts Tobias on the inside lane. He takes that opportunity. He goes out, great lead. He looks to win it, hits the bank. Oh, here comes Scoop. But it wasn't enough to beat Tobias. Tobias is lucky with that one. Both him and Bolo Brown are moving on to the finals. They'll be racing against Kester Jr. and racing Rick Berry. Let's move on to race 1 of the finals. Charles Kester Jr. showing off why he thinks he should be the winner of this race, taking a very commanding lead coming out of the waterfall. On the final stretch, no one's close to him. Racing Rick Berry and Tobias Johnson in third place. It seems like Bolo Brown got to the accident into the intersection. That's a DNF. I think Bolo Brown needs to look at his steering. In this race, racing Rick Berry is in the lead, followed by Charles Kester. But as we come down to the final stretch, we can see Bolo in the back having the same accident that happened in race 1. Charles Kester Jr. and racing Rick Berry looking real good with 8 points each. Moving on to race 3. Tobias Johnson taking an early lead, trying to get much needed points. Racing Rick catching up on him pretty quick. That's a fast Cadillac. As you can see, coming to the finish line, Charles Kester trying to pass Bolo, but it was too late. This final race is basically between Charles, racing Rick, and Tobias Johnson. Let's get it. Bolo Brown taking his first win very easily, but it's not enough. This race is between Tobias and racing Rick Berry because Kester is DNF. Let's look at the point spread. And by 1 point, doing just enough to win the series, racing Rick Berry is our champion. As a reminder, this race was brought to you by the Cliff International Raceway. If you want to take part in any one of the Cliffcoin races in the future, you'd have to be a member of the Cliff International Raceway. I'll have the link in the description. See you guys later.